thing on? Is this thing going? I suppose I should probably hit play on the button. There we go. All right. What is going on, everybody? What is going on? Thanks for joining, everybody. I appreciate it. I'm Sean. I like tabletop RPGs. Do you like tabletop RPGs? Ryan West maintains the number one join slot, if you will. Morning. Joe, good to see you. Nubis, good afternoon. Nelson, morning. Laramie, morning. Keith, good to see you. From Chucktown. Shambot, good to see you. All right. Harrigan, morning. Colorado, doesn't it snow all the time in Colorado? Does it just snow all the time? No, only in the mountains, dude. I mean, you guys average like, what, 800 inches a year? I don't know. Wayne, good to see you. Test Trekkie, jet lag, where'd you fly from? Let people want to know. Victor, morning, good to see you. Orcus, Blake, good morning, evening, good early morning. I can't. How do you Americans deal with all the wet white crap and all this cold stuff falling from the sky? It's miserable. Yeah, well, we just look at it as being as an internal snow globe. So everything's cheery and happy. And Tyler, morning. Hobbsy, good to see you. CJ, hey, CJ, morning. Good to see you. Sure ain't snowing in Blake's area. No. Blake, you don't get any snow, do you? I would hope not. First level DM RPGs. Yes, it's snowing right now here in Colorado. Another Colorado guy. Or woman, I guess. Good to see ya. Welcome. Morning, Michael. Morning. Good crew. Already starting out. I'm Sean. So if you haven't tuned into this stream before, I used to do a RPG podcast for a few years with my co-host Brett. And it was called Gaming and BS. You could still get the catalog is still out there wherever you find your fine RPG podcasts. System agnostic, talked about a bunch of topics and had many of the people in the chat write in, call in, email, or just be part of the community and listening to us over the years. And then we've got a Discord community of great individuals. Last week we just did a mini virtual convention, so some of the names in the chat are pretty frequent flyers, if you will. So and friends of mine. So each Saturday at 8 a.m. I get on here and stream. I usually go over print news, crowdfunding, things like that. And then there's usually a question of the day, which I'll kick off here in a second. It's not. I may start tweaking the question of the day to the point of making it more of a topic, so we get more discussion around it. It often spurs discussion anyway. But Evil Merlin, good to see you. Morning, welcome back. Matt, good to see you. So just some personal favorite RPGs. I wouldn't, to say that I would be biased is probably an understatement, right? Like there's some folks that do podcasts or streams or Twitch streams or art YouTubes. Like the YouTube channel, I think feels like the YouTube space recently feels like it's D&D and then everything else. For those that don't know me very well, and have just recently kind of tuned in, I was big Free League fan. A lot of their catalog I have. And I say, some people's like, what's going on? Well, I mean, I haven't bought anything from them in a while, and I haven't played anything from them in a while, but there's some things that, I think I've played most of the games, but nothing Forbidden Lands at length. And it's probably the one I've played the most of their catalog. And then, of course, a little bit of everything. I've been delving more into like what the OSR tends to lean towards, like Outcast Silver Raiders. We have a game coming up. I'm looking forward to that. I'm a big Delta Green fan, so. Caverna, good to see ya. Good to see ya. Glad you could make it. Is Free League the name of an RPG? It is not the name of an RPG. It is the name of the publishing company. You're trolling me, right, Akadokin? A Kodakin. But it's also a faction in Coriolis. That's where it originated. So Coriolis, the RPG, has the Free League faction in there, right? I think they're the traders, and that's where that comes from. I believe. If my RPG knowledge serves me. Well, that's good. Good to hear. Tad, good to see you. Yeah, he's trolling me. Text sometimes gets lost. I believe he is being snarky, but some people don't know where Free League, the actual RPG, comes from. Or Free League, the name. Dope shirt. Yeah. It's the one that I bought this and Flynn's. And the Flynn's shirt shrunk. This one has not. Like, it's still kind of long. So, I don't know. It's my beat up Atari shirt. Long live Atari. Running base today for Free League. Ooh. This is the first, like, what session are you on? First level DM. I will affectionately call you first. You guys and your long handles. The shirt shrunk. That's what I tell myself. Hey, man. Or I didn't outgrow this one as much as I outgrew the other one. So they must have been two different sizes. Terrence, a Free League. Why cost money? What's up, Terrence? Welcome. Let's get to the question of the day, right? Let's get into this thing. So instead of I am curious. This is more of a spur of the discussion question of the day. And it's not even really a question. It's like, I have been listening. So I'm setting this up, right? So I've been listening to 3D6 down the line from recommendations of some of the folks in the chat. And if you haven't listened to them, they record their live plays. I think they stream them. I don't know if they stream them on YouTube or Twitch, but regardless, I know they're on YouTube. I've watched them on YouTube briefly. And then they do have an audio component that they put out, right? So they just extract the audio and put it out for podcasts to listen to. If you haven't listened to them, I'd recommend them if you like actual plays. They are old school in the fact that they have played OSE and used Dolmenwood as the setting. So they had a long campaign with that. I am listening to their Arden Vool actual play that is also using old school essentials. And what I like about them is that it's a decent, it's like a real actual play. Like and people have told me that. And that's why they're like, you should listen to it because it's probably one of the truer renditions of an actual play from the perspective of like, they're not voice actors, they're not professionals. And they actually say that. Welcome to our show. This is what we're going to be doing. We are purposely doing this because we want to show that this is what a regular RPG group is and how we act and everything. And the nice thing is that there is a bit of levity in how they play. When they play, they're playing. And it's not all fart jokes, inside jokes, people eating potato chips with the plastic bag next to the microphone. The audio is fairly decent. There's a couple guys that are a little low, but it's fairly decent in that regard as far as production goes. John has radio voice. He's the GM. I like his style. So if you want to check him out, go and check him out. Okay. And they mention is kind of how we roll. This is what we do. And we, hopefully you'll enjoy it. They publish their home rules, their house rules. So one of the things that occurred to me was the time tracking, which may be a topic for another stream, but also like resource management. And I know there's been debates on our Discord, specifically like the Analytic Dice guys. Gabe, I don't know if you're in the chat. Sometimes he shows up, as well as Kevin. Sometimes he shows up. If you haven't checked them out, check them out. So they play one-shots of RPGs. And when so they'll go through the rules and the mechanics. And sometimes if there's a gear thing or, consumables, they'll talk about how that's managed. And there is, they have preferences in how that they like their stuff, right? So Gabe is not a big resource die. I think I could say this. Gabe is not a big resource die type of mechanic person, right? Like if you shoot an arrow, just mark an arrow off your sheet. Like how hard can it be? Why do I have to roll a die and then it moves up and down and, kind of wonky that way. So what I wanted to ask, mostly towards GMs, but it doesn't have to be, if you just play, and that's cool too, is like how important, and I understand this is going to fluctuate. Like it's going to be all across the board because there's going to be folks that play games and that is like the last thing they want to deal with is managing gear and resources and rations and expendables. And I get that. And then there are some that are like, dude, you can't play a game like this without keeping track of them in some way, shape, or form. So mileage may vary. There's no wrong answer. I'm just getting your take because, I'm about to play Outcast Silver Raiders. I've been looking at some OSR games and I've run Forbidden Lands. And even with like an OSR, to be OSR, not to get into that debate or anything, but if it's more old school, and then there's new SR, if you want to call it that too, which is like the spirit of old school, but with some modern day mechanics, I would say. So for example, Outcast Silver Raiders, if you haven't checked it out, I did a video on this channel if you're interested in what that game's about, and I go into the mechanics. And it is written in the spirit of old school, but they use resource dice, all right, in that game. And the old Outcast Silver Raiders specifically is, at its core, a hex crawl. It's not West March's exploration, but it is a hex crawl. So, could they get lost? Of course. But it's not like overly centric on the discovery piece as it relates to like a sandbox, hex crawl, last frontier, go and explore, uncover whatever you come across. Like takes place in the Mythic North. I digress. But essentially they do the die mechanics. So if you're not familiar with some of the newer resource type of systems, when I say die type, you usually get a D4 to a D12. And when you are to expend something that is consumable, you would roll the die type, depending on how much you have. And if you roll a 1 or a 2, your die type goes down 1. And if you are at a D4 and you roll a 1 or 2, there is no lesser die, so you essentially run out. The other flip side is, in addition to that, if you have, say, a resource die of a D6 and your comrade is out of something and you want to give them something like food or rations, you can lower your die type 1 and then they can hire theirs from 0 to a D4. So that's how you can kind of go back and forth. So I know there's some people, and this is it can be very polarizing. Some people will just be like, I hate that system. And then there are some people that will be like, ugh, I have to check, how many arrows do I have? And it becomes like, some will say, well, it's accounting. I don't want to play accounting. I want to just play. So and some GMs are like, you have a never ending quiver of arrows. You never run out. Kind of like science fiction, laser guns, I don't know. So I wanted to, because I think I bring this up because as I was listening to 3D6 Down the Line, not only is time tracking kind of a thing that the GM does, which is fantastic. Like I got to start implementing that a little bit more when I play games and say, because of course you can't have a, what this guy Gex is saying, you can't have a good RPG without a method of valid time tracking or whatever. But the point is that I think it has to play a role in, like, it has to impact the player characters. They have to make decisions based on those things. And I think if you just remove that, like, well, you've got the quiver of never-ending arrows, or you never run out of food because you got the magic jar of mayonnaise. That's a inside joke from Tomb of Annihilation. Then that stuff doesn't pertain to the player characters, and as they adventure, it never comes into play. And if it never comes into play, then they don't have to make decisions based around some of that stuff. So in Forbidden Lands, I like it because, if there's a reason why you travel along the river, because you don't have to worry about running out of water. Even if you roll ones all day, just go out on the river and fill up. So that purposely, the player characters are purposely choosing to walk along a body of water so that they don't run out of water. So it's kind of like giving them a choice. But they're choosing that, right? Because then you can make that river dangerous or less dangerous, or that comes with its own set of consequences, right? Because then you've got that path. Maybe it's not even the safest path, so it's a trade-off. Like, those things have to be contemplated by 4 or 5 people in the party, and some will say yes, we should, and some will say no, we shouldn't. All right, so let's go to the chat. Does that make sense? Oh boy, here we go. No fart jokes. Okay, I'm at the top of the thing here. Kristen, good to see you. Morning. So when people come in and they read the question of the day and they come in late, they're going to be like, oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. That's not a yes or no or favorite RPG question. The setup. You're at the golf course and I'm teeing up this complex, I don't know. It's not even a complex discussion necessarily. Michael, good to see you. Morning. No fart jokes. Pass. Yeah, well, Terrence, high standards. Laramie's, always the Laura. I tried 3D6 down the line. It's not for me. I don't think it's like, to me, like, I found the Delta Green game of Glass Cannon captured my attention more. I think it's because of the way that they run Delta Green, and it's Delta Green and it's creepy, and you kind of you get the shock of like, what just happened? Where there is a sense of very, it seems almost procedural in 3D6 down the line. And I don't think that's bad. I think it's just a different style. So I'm empathizing with Laramie's taste in AP. Sean already knows I like the scarcity checks from Outcast Silver Raiders. And scarcity checks is what it's called in Outcast Silver Raiders, is what Ryan leads to. Not only is there a die type for the type of gear, it tells you when you should make a scarcity check. In Forbidden Lands, it does to some degree, right? But it's more a GM like, okay, we just had a combat. You just shot a bunch of arrows. Roll your arrows. Like, did you lose any? Did you recover them? Kind of thing. Where in Outcast Silver Raiders, it stipulates like if you have arrows and you shoot them in a combat scene, at the end of each combat scene, you make a scarcity check, and it'll tell you. I can't remember the other ones because I haven't read it, but there's wrong answers. Oh boy, Hey, and Blake always being my kind of guy in the booth, if you will. Thanks, Blake. I appreciate it. If you like this so far, like and subscribe or hit the thumbs down button. I appreciate it. All right, so here we go. Hobbs, I am interested to know because he runs in this. I mean, he had a podcast called Hobbs and Friends of the OSR. So he says, I despise keeping track of shit as a player, but tend to run games that force players to keep track of resources. See the conundrum? That does not surprise me. I'm game master. Keep track. You got to keep track of this stuff. I'm a player. Oh Christ, Sean, you're gonna make me keep track of this stuff. Keith, it's important if the rest of the game supports it and backs it up. I totally agree. Like, if it doesn't, then it becomes tedious and pointless. I agree. But it has to play a role in something. And I don't know if it's always going to be so obvious. Like, you could have this kind of like mentality, like, you got to keep track of your stuff, whether it is a resource. That's the first question. Do you have your players keep track of this stuff? Whether it's resource dice or just crossing off boxes or erasing numbers and lowering them down. Because I think what I get from 3D6 down the line, like even time management, which is another resource, because we could say, well, resource management is time is a resource, gear is a resource. But like he would every once in a while, like you could do that, it'll take you a turn. And most of the players were like, oh, it's a turn. Who gives a shit, right? Okay, yeah, so what? Like, I'm not having to go to the office and be there at 8 a.m. in the morning. But I'll tell you what, as the sun sets, those things will come back and bite you. Now we're going to take a turn. We're going to go and explore this. Okay, you go over there, find something. Okay, we're going to try, we'll go into the cave, right? Okay, how far are you going to go in? Whatever. Okay, you're going to be in there for, say you were in there for a turn. Okay. And those things like, and then before you know it, the safe haven that they've been trying to go to, right? The point of light, safe haven, all of a sudden now they're 2 hours out and it's going to be dark before they get to the safe haven. What happens when darkness comes? Like there's this big cycle that I think needs to occur in some of those games where I think in the player characters, if it's not obvious in their face, like it's going to be dark in 5 minutes. Well, we got to go. Like they won't see it until it happens. But keeping track of that time and those resources is where it snowballs into a big ball of crap at the end. And it could be like bad news. I have nothing but wrong answers. I'm very consistent that way. Great. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay. Comes down to the type of game. Got it. I think we establish that, right? My group is pretty anal about it in Tomb of Annihilation, but other games we are less likely to count and just roll a die to see if ammo was recovered. Yeah, I get that. Ryan, encumbrance and alignment, the unending discussion argument. Well, if those are the only two things, some of these RPG podcasts have pretty short studio lists. Test Track says, I like Mouse Ritter's approach. When you fight, any max damage or max spell rolls. Any max damage spell rolls, damage your armor, prevents marks usage on the item, and once it has 3 marks, it's done. Oh, interesting. Okay. And that's another thing, too. I didn't do like, I should probably spend like 2 hours and come up with like 20 games and how they use, how you manage resources. That's why I'm bringing it up to you guys, because it's a live chat and it spurs discussion. So thank you. That's interesting. Heard good things about Mouse Ritter. It continues. Rations or ammo are roll 1d6, 1 use. On a 4-5-6 mark usage. Oh, interesting. 50% chance. Okay. So I don't know how to use usage die. I just remind people to track arrows and food. I'm sure things get missed, but I'm not running an accounting simulator. That's the argument I hear. I don't want to do accounting. But see, so my argument would be, well, then it doesn't matter in your game. Why even have him do that, Laramie? If you're doing I'm being devil's advocate here, but who's to say Sean just like, yep, yeah, okay. They go 5 sessions and never run out of anything. That's the question I posed to Laramie with that response. So when your players run out of stuff, do they say, I ran out of this? Because if they do, then great. But if they don't, and you don't give a rip because you're not playing the accounting game, then it's not going to come into your game. Therefore, it's not going to impact a requirement to make a decision. Chris that says, I really hate scarcity of resources unless it's part of the game itself, like red markets. Yep. But I'm running an exploration crawl and resources are scarce, so I personally think they matter here. This dude. I don't know where this guy's coming or going. I like tracking arrows, bullets, etc. It's not that tough and adds tension. I don't like tracking food and water. I like the resource die for spells. It adds mystery and tension. Okay. Well, thanks, Nelson. Narratively, I thought it was presumed you get ammo/repair armor in town, considered part of your presumed competence level. Okay, all right. Dren, good to see you. Welcome. I've learned about usage die in Black Hack, and afterward I saw it in Forbidden Lands. I love it. Advanced Tiny Dungeons, only D6s, also has rules for it and fits very well. There you go. Nice. One of the main reasons I quit an Abomination Vaults game was every time we went back to town, one of the guys would get a spreadsheet of things out, and we'd spend an hour with him buying junk. Yeah, the struggle is real. I get it. D&D, the shopping game. I get it. Roger, I don't use usage dies and just have players track their resources, but I do love the idea of grabbing for an arrow and you realize you just used your last one. Fair and great, but how do you adjudicate that? If you have a group that's like, well, I trust Roger, like he's our game master. If he says I go back to reach an arrow, that's in the game. I shouldn't be mad at him. There's other people that are going to be super pissed at the game master. Oh, I see how it is. Now it's a combat. Now we're surprised. I've been plugging people away as a missile combatant and just killing all your guys, and now you're going to nerf me. I see how it is. I see how it is, Roger. Right? Yeah, magic jar of mayonnaise. Yeah, that's what we got in Tomb of Annihilation. If you played that game, you know what I'm talking about. CJ, I prefer resource dice or trading meta currency. Bennies, fate points to ratchet up tension instead of rigorous bookkeeping. All right, fair. Fair. Caverta says, I also like PBTA games where resources can be affected by bad rolls, narratively affecting the resources of gear. Yep. The magic of resource dice is that they cover multiple phenomena with one mechanic: resources, loss, spoilage, consumption, theft, in a dramatic way. The drama is running out. Thanks, Wayne. The more involved a game has rarity of resources, the more I feel studious resource management is necessary. Keep within the depths of a dungeon in a desert or situations like Twilight 2000, for example. Yep, totally get it. Signed, Orcus. Roger says, I think unlimited resources isn't great. It takes away from a lot of spells and abilities, create food and water, hunting, etc. I'm liking what Roger's putting down. Harrigan, not short of opinions. Blog, I am happy to blog fodder for you if you want, man. Not that you need my permission, but check out Harrigan's Hearth. I think it comes up in a Google search. Harrigan says, love usage dice and their headwaters. The Black Hack. Also love regular resource tracking if it's important to the game. And like not tracking when not critical to the game. Yes. Yeah. Woke up late, but here, Flint, good to see ya. Morning. Just going through here. All right. Michael says, if resource tracking is important to an experience a game is trying to create, I embrace it. Outside those circumstances, I handwave a lot of resource management. Yeah, I don't do it in Delta Green. Although there was a couple times I've ran a recent scenario where I'm like, not that it would be resource management, but it would be like, hey, what gear does the group have going into this? And do I need them to make a list? Because I think part of the thing is that, well, if everybody has everything all the time, in a modern game like Delta Green, then it would be something I would wonder. Like, because that's also a thing, right? Like, hey, I'm going to go, we're in the middle of Montana nowhere, and I want to, in the 90s, right? Early 90s, maybe, well, in this case, it was the mid 90s. Like, there's no great internet. Or so then they have to go to another big town over. That takes time. So that's a time management piece. Or, we infiltrate someplace and then stuff turns sideways. Who has guns, who doesn't? Because that's a big deal. Because if you have a gun, you're going to do things differently than if you don't have a gun, your player character anyway. Uh-oh. Wayne, that's you, buddy. It's the snow on the Georgia internet pipes. At least I hope it is. Orca says, I'm not really a fan of resource dice. I'd rather not leave my available inventory up to chance. It is a weird balance. It's a weird balance. I could see just like not doing resource dice. We're going to go old school. You're going to check it off. You have boxes. You have 5 rations, 5 boxes. You check off a box. Where's everybody at? And then you're done. I think the nice thing about resource, to Wayne's point earlier, is like you're not sure when you're going to run out. And here is the other thing, which I think is somewhat missed, is it's sometimes very black and white. Sometimes we roll with role-playing games, even in the fantasy space, where it's like, well, it's very realistic and it's very black and white. So it's the day that goes by and you eat at the end of the day, and then, you eat the whole ration and you check off that ration. Well, what if you don't eat? Like, what if a ration, like I don't eat a whole ration? Like, what is a whole ration? Do I have to eat a whole ration to live? Or what if I eat half? What happens if we camp and, I don't know, bugs get into it? Because that's happened in Forbidden Lands, right? That's one of the mishaps when they make a camp roll, or they fail a camp roll. When they fail a make camp roll, then guess what? You put your tent on a freaking anthill, and you wake up and it got into your food, and your food's contaminated, or food contaminated, whether it's bugs or something else, or it rots. That's, I think, how it can come in handy as well, instead of just going tracking. Oh, you know what? By the way, mark off a food. Well, I didn't eat any. Well, yeah, I know, but it's rotted now. So one of your food pieces is rotted. So then the player character is like, WTF, GM? Again, I think this goes back to a bigger problem from the days of gaming, where now, unless, not all games, but I found that more larger modern day, like from 3.0 up in the D&D space, in Pathfinder, like part of what they did was they leveled that playing field so that the days of the a-hole game master just pulling stuff out of their butt to make the player characters' lives miserable, they tried to level as much as humanly possible in order to even the playing field. That's my personal take, right? If there's an issue, the player can bring it up in the rules. Look, this is the rule, I get to abide by it, where back in the day, the GM would just pull rules out of their butt. And that would piss players off, and I think that's why the design of some of those games have changed so much, so dramatically. So then it becomes like, well, so anyways, that's, see how these things are all interconnected, man. William, morning. I'll get to we're going to get, let's see. All right. We got a little bit of time, and then we're going to wrap up this discussion, and then we'll go into some other, the game stuff. So what's out there. But I wanted to start off, I'm going to starting off with this, I think, because it's going to spur some conversation. It's going to be a little more interesting. Not that the question of the day was less interesting, but it's very like, what are you playing? This game, end of discussion, right? This spurs a little bit more convo. Tracking food and water just pushes the game to boring side quests of scavenging, hunting, etc. But you have to make those things interesting. That's the trick. Like, yes, you're absolutely right, Nelson. You have to make it interesting. If they go to the water, there's a monster there. It's known to have a monster there. If they're going to go to the water, the freaking Loch Ness monster is going to come out, eat them bastards. That's the difference. It's not just going to the water and marking, check, right? Check off this, check off that. Or it is, And to Nelson's point, and some of the other folks, it's the type of game that you want to play. Like, I don't find resource tracking to be that big a deal if you're not doing an exploration or adventuring out in the countryside. Like, if it's not like, I picture this. I know where Nelson lives, and beautiful country, I'm sure. So say, for example, you know what? I'm going to get away from civilization. I'm going to get away from the internet and people and job and work and everything else and pets and whatever. I'm going to pack a backpack. I'm going to go out into the freaking woods and not go to like a state park, right? I want to go to a state park and start, and then I'm going to go out hiking in the freaking backwoods. Or as they say down in Blake's neck of the woods, they're going to go on a walkabout. Like, things become very real in that when you're thinking about doing that, right? Like, what happens if I'm alone or I get hurt? What do I have to pack? What do I need to take? Like, even camping, right? And that's not, so Sean, it's not the same as a role-playing game. Like, it's not camping the role-playing game. But my point is if there's adventuring out beyond, those things come into play. If it's an urban adventure and you could just walk into a shop and a bakery and buy food, it's not that big a deal. And I think the exploration, adventuring, West Marches, hex crawls, things of that nature, this stuff kind of can play a role in determining which direction the player characters go to. If you're not interested in that type of game, then this is really for naught, honestly. Wayne, the counting each ration mechanic seems realistic, but without mechanics for all events I listed above really isn't, and it tends to not lead to drama or fun in my experience, but tedium. Yeah. To me, Matt says, it depends. You guys are slipping on me, man. Way to go, Matt. 10 XP for it depends. Does resource management affect the quality and drama of the game? Or is it just record keeping? One of the reasons why Bag of Holding was created. Oh, the Bag of Holding. How easy it is to have one. That's why I'm also changing, like 5e. Part of me wants to run a 3-5 game. West Marches 3-5, whatever, go nuts, right? But the Bag of Holding. That's why Outcast Silver Raiders and some of these those types of games are appealing to me, especially Low Magic, is because that shit, like Eberron is Bag of Holding world to me. Like Ever-Burning Torches. Walk into a magic shop, buy an Ever-Burning Torch, you have a flashlight. Done. Finished. Right? The Bag of Holding. Yep. Everybody can have one. Go nuts. But that is a different setting and a different game altogether, right? In my opinion. That's not something that appeals to me now. It could, like, I'm going to run a pulp adventure, but pulp in Eberron using 5th edition or 3.5 is not going to be about resources. It's going to be about like a Star Wars movie where we don't see people going into a bathroom because that doesn't exist. Like nobody eats and nobody poops in the movies. Well, they eat, but not, you know what I'm saying? In action movies, they may not eat. Sean just admitted we're doing his homework for him. So, yeah, and Hobbs says, keeping track of resources also allows the system to attack the character sheet, such as with random event tables. Nice to add tension to a session without making it combat as sport. Yeah, give me a roll. Oh, man, here we go, right? Here we go. Oh. You got to do it in moderation. Can't have them roll every, 5 minutes. Shambot says, I don't mind tracking resources as a player, and on the flip side, I only tend to call for a resource check after something or lots of things have happened that would reasonably cause my players to use them. Not dice-driven, but in Shadowdark, when you light a torch, the timer starts, and when the timer goes off, torch is out. No more torches. Bad things, man, bad things. Yeah. My West Marches game was built on Shadowdark, or using Shadowdark. Sean, back to your counter, and I respect your counter. My point is, I remind people. They probably forget occasionally, which is why I remind. And yeah, one of the players just ran out of the good arrows last session and is down to using the crappy goblin arrows. They're tracking. They just might miss 1 or 2 out of every 40 or 50s is what I'm saying. What's next? We stop tracking hit points? I know, mass chaos, cats and dogs sleeping together, mass hysteria, says Roger. Aaron, I think there's a big overlap between people who prefer European-style board games who don't like the dice mechanics and people who prefer American-style who do like the dice mechanics. Interesting take. I like both, but prefer Euro-style. Well, in Euro-style, many of them are resource-driven, right? Or worker placement, resource-driven. Something that, roll dice or go around the board. I mean, dudes, ladies and gentlemen, we got to admit, growing up, I know I grew up in the 80s. Growing up in the 80s, the board game scene in the U.S. should have been criminal. Absolutely criminal. The Parker Brothers and, Parker Brothers, Milton Bradley, some of those games, talk about, be a positive force, Sean. Talk about some junk-ass board games. Now, some of them can be fun. Don't get me wrong. Hey, let's throw it down and let's play, right? And some of them are pretty good. Scrabble uses the brain a little bit. But, man, Euro style, hello, right? Such a different ball game. It's not roll dice, go around, do thing. It's not Trouble, Parcheesi, frickin' Monopoly. Some of them were just terrible. Clue was interesting and could be interesting, but man, the roll the die or go around the board. Ugh. Sorry is another one. Yeesh. Only allow shopping between sessions. That's one way to do it. Hey, Eileen, good to see you. Morning. All right, I'm catching up. What's up, Matt? Good to see you. Nubis, I only used resource tracking Hot Springs Island, and the players didn't enjoy it. Said it got boring after a while. One of the players straight up hated it. I'd like to try it out as a player. Yeah, that would be a tough one. Players just hating on it. Give me a break. This is so dumb. GTG plane call? Get to gate? Is that what it is? Are you still traveling, Trekkie? All right. Safe travels if you are. Any of your agents have a Costco card on your character sheet? No? Okay, walk me through how you're getting in there. Right? I mean, maybe it's not that. Okay, I see what you're saying. But, I mean, I just run into so many times where it's oh, yeah, I got this. What? Where did that come from? Right? I had it on my character sheet. So all this time, you are piled in a car of 4 other agents, and you've had this all along no matter what. You get out of the car, you've automatically grabbed your bag, and now, I carry a backpack with all my shit in it everywhere I go. It's what? Usage die is strange to me. In my current game, I have 8 arrows left and nowhere near town. I'm stressed out about running out. Resource die, I could be out on my next shot. Loses agency. Yeah, arrow, okay. Example, for sure, can understand that. But, I mean, the only argument I would say against that, contrary to that, would be is every arrow good? Yeah, you got 8 arrows, but maybe they're all shit. Fletching's all gone. You pull it back and it splits right through the wood. The wood that it was made from was rotted. I don't know. Did you inspect your arrows? Oh, oh God, I can't believe you made me inspect the arrows. Are you serious? consider one ration the same as one MRE. Thanks for serving, Matt. It's meant to be the daily caloric intake, one ration per day. And they're vacuum sealed. They don't rot ever. No bugs can get on them. That's a good analogy, though. So many but rules. You just detailed why the forge exists. It doesn't anymore either, buddy. One ration equals one jar of Vegemite. No thanks. I'd rather take the fatigue penalty. Yeah, you lose 5 pounds of weight. Therefore, your encumbrance is... Now you are encumbered. Oh, man. Yeah, that's a point Harrigan mentions. If you're at a D4, you could, yes. So, Nelson, in your example, it would be a D. You would be at a D4 for arrows. And you would have maybe 2 or 3. 2 of them are shit. You fired your last one. That would be the story. You're not going from D6 to 0. So, to Harrigan's point. All right. Yeah, easy to have a bag of holding. Not in my game. What? You suck. 3.5.